The HOA built a private island on my grandfather's lake, so I let them throw the party first. The morning everything changed. I drove down the lake expecting the same thing I always did. Quiet water, birds, mountains in the reflection. Instead, I hit the brakes and just stared. Cranes floated on barges in the middle of the lake. Excavators dumped truckload after truckload of rock into the water. Within minutes it clicked. Someone was building an island on my family's water. Land my grandfather had owned for generations. I didn't panic. I pulled out my phone and started recording. If this was a mistake, fine. But if it wasn't, I was going to need proof, not anger. The next day I got closer and saw the sign. Future Island Estates, exclusive HOA waterfront community. Boats delivered luxury materials by the hour. And right in the middle of it all stood Karen Whitmore, the HOA president, pointing at blueprints for private villas and a clubhouse like she owned the whole lake. I didn't say a word to her. I drove straight to the county records office instead. Hours of comparing old maps to new ones later, everything confirmed what my grandfather always told me. The shoreline, the water rights, all of it still belonged to us. No transfer, no agreement, no permission ever given to the HOA. To be absolutely sure, I hired an independent survey team. GPS equipment, drones, the works. By the end of the day, the lead surveyor looked up from his tablet and said something I won't forget. Your property line runs straight through that island. They built the whole thing inside your boundary. Then came the second surprise. One engineer noticed the fill material used to build the island was settling unevenly. Nothing dangerous yet, he said. But without further engineering review, that island had no business hosting crowd. None of that slowed the HOA down. Glass villas kept rising out of the water. Landscapers planted rows of trees on land that wasn't theirs. I stood across the lake every evening, quietly filming it all. My attorney sent formal notices to the HOA and the county, asking them to pause construction until ownership was settled. Silence. Not one reply. Instead, the HOA did the opposite of pausing. They announced a massive grand opening celebration. Investors, reporters, local officials, all invited to celebrate what Karen called the community's greatest achievement. News crews showed up early to film Karen smiling for the cameras, calling the island a symbol of luxury and progress. She never once mentioned who actually owned the water underneath it. By then, my legal team had everything filed and ready. Neighbors kept asking why I looked so calm about the whole thing. Simple, I knew something they didn't. The grand opening wasn't going to be the celebration Karen thought it was. Opening day arrived with perfect weather. Boats lined up at the docks. Guests in their best outfits stepped onto the island. Waiters passed drinks. Drones buzzed overhead filming it all. From my dock across the water, I watched quietly. The real show hadn't started yet. Karen took the stage, thanked her investors, praised the board, called the island proof of bold leadership. The crowd applauded. And that's when several county vehicles rolled slowly toward the entrance. No sirens, no shouting, just county inspectors, sheriff's deputies, and a structural engineer walking straight through the crowd. Every conversation on that island stopped at once. Officials asked for permits, environmental approvals, and ownership documents. Karen, still smiling, handed over her binders like she had nothing to hide. She was wrong. Inside the clubhouse, inspectors flipped through page after page while engineers cross-checked the blueprints against county records. The smiles didn't last. Multiple approvals had never been finalized. The property lines listed didn't match the county's actual records, not even close. Then the engineers went back outside and confirmed what my surveyor had already told me weeks earlier. The fill under the island had settled unevenly. Until a full review was done, no large gathering could safely continue there. The party ended fast. Deputies calmly guided guests back to their boats. Reporters swapped their ribbon-cutting shots for something far more interesting. Within the hour, the island that had been packed with music and champagne sat almost completely empty. The next morning, my attorney filed everything: surveys, deeds, aerial photos, water rights. Every document pointing to one simple truth: our ownership had never changed, and the HOA never had permission to build a single dock on that water. In court, the maps went up on the screen, and the surveyors walked through it boundary by boundary. It wasn't debate about opinions. It was decades of official records, laid out plainly. The judge suspended construction, while the legal process played out. Contractors hauled their equipment off the island. Security fences went up around a project that would sit frozen, waiting. Weeks later, the ruling came down. The evidence spoke for itself. The HOA had built an entire luxury development without securing the land it stood on. Construction stayed suspended. County surveyors came out and permanently marked the true shoreline with updated GPS data, every marker lining up exactly with my grandfather's decades-old deed. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed Karen, and the board looking for a statement. They said nothing and walked away. By morning, the headlines weren't about luxury living anymore. They were about what happens when you skip the rules. A few days later, I walked back down to the same dock, where my grandfather taught me to fish as a kid. The lake was quiet again, just water against the shore and birds overhead. Standing there, I realized this had never been about buildings or exclusivity. It was about the peace this place had given my family for generations, and almost lost. The county later held a public meeting on stronger rules for future waterfront projects. Nobody wanted to stop progress. They just wanted it to follow the law next time. By summer's end, the wildlife came back. Fishermen returned at sunrise. The mountains reflected across the water the same way they had for 60 years. And in the distance, the unfinished island stood silent. Not a symbol of luxury anymore, just a reminder of what happens when you build on land that was never yours to take.